Thanks so much for coming along to this workshop. Looking at the list of workshops you could have come to, well done for coming to this one. So my name's Dave, and we're going to be working our way through a bunch of material today, and hopefully by the end of our time together, you've got some concrete actions to help get mission moving in your church and in your context. But I've got an opening question for us, and that is, how would you rate the mission heat at your church? And by mission heat, I mean an expression which refers to the church culture we all seek, where people are truly gripped with a zeal for the glory of God, or more simply, fired up for evangelism. So snap that QR code and that'll come through some results for me, and I'll let you know sort of where we're sitting together and then share them, and then I'll get you to talk to the people next to you. So just get a little bit there. There's coming through. The options you've got, it doesn't exist. We live in the Arctic in our church. There's a glimmer of heat every now and then. It's like living in New Zealand. It's like a warm bath, soothing, but it could go cold at any point. And the other option is it's strong and hot, like a good cup of tea should be. Okay. Now, before I share some of the results with you, why don't you just turn to the people around you? If you don't know who they are, introduce yourself, but answer the question, what makes you say that? Like, we've put the options up there. Like, if you've said, there's a glimmer of heat, well, what makes you say your particular response? So just a couple of minutes, share with the person next to you what makes you say your response. So you might need just to share, hey, I put this one, and go from there. So a couple of minutes, off you go. Okay. Let's wrap up those discussions. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of intel into some of the people around you, what's going on with the mission heats in their church. In terms of the results, so we had just shy of 80 people put a response in. 1% said it doesn't exist. We live in the Arctic, which is great. 30% said there's a glimmer of heat every now and then. Like living in New Zealand. 60% said it's like a bit of a warm bath, soothing, but you don't feel like it has the confidence to sort of keep going. And 9% said that it is going strong. So that's at least some encouragement in there. It'd be great, hopefully by the end of conference, and you've got some ideas to go back to get that 60% lower and the 9% higher. Now, in terms of if you want to jump into the, again, maybe just talk to the people around you, maybe some new people. What's one question you want answered at the end of this workshop? And it'd be great if you can pop that question into the Reach Australia app, into the feed for this workshop. Then when we get to the time of actually answering some questions, if there's things in there that, you're desperate to sort of answer and get an answer to, we can prioritise those. So talk to some more people around you. What's one question you want answered by the end of this workshop? Off you go. A couple of minutes again. Okay, if you can pop some of those questions that you're talking about into the app, that would be very helpful for us as we come to answer some questions. Now, in terms of the shape of the workshop this afternoon, we're going to spend some time just very briefly at the very beginning thinking about our own personal convictions for mission. And then I'll jump in some of the lessons from Kellyville and the things that we've done. And I'll tell you a bit about our church as we go through. But we need to start with the convictions of our own hearts. And we need to start with what I think is the super obvious question, but yet sometimes we need to start with the obvious. And the obvious question is, do you want to see people saved? And we often end up here as the driver for that question in the Great Commission, as the thing that propels us forward to do mission, to see people saved. But when you look at the Gospel of Matthew, the Great Commission is the culmination of Jesus' ministry. You see all the way through the priority that Jesus places on the forgiveness of sins in his own ministry. And it shines and glows off the page each and every sort of time you see Jesus interact. The very reason he was sent into the world in Matthew chapter 1. And I just want to briefly dwell just a little bit in Matthew chapter 9. And you know the story of the paralyzed man through the roof. And in that story you have one unseen need, don't you? You see there's a sinner in need of forgiveness, but no one else sees it. Everyone sees the super obvious need in the man who can't walk. And the whole way you can imagine as his mates are taking him to Jesus, he's thinking, today's the day. They're taking me into Jesus. I'm finally going to be able to walk again. And can you imagine potentially the disappointment in his mind as he hears Jesus' words, hey buddy, your sins are forgiven. You see, what Jesus does, even in this episode, is puts his mission front and centre. The unseen need trumps the seen need. And what matters in the end for each and every single one of us is whether our sins have been forgiven. You see, the crunch for this paralysed man comes when he's able to walk again, but because he doesn't know the road rules of Jerusalem, he's run over by a road camel, right? That's when the crunch comes for forgiveness of sins. That's the ultimate thing. It's the same for the average everyday Aussie, isn't it? They have an unseen need that we know about, that they need to have their sins forgiven. And they have many, many seen needs, many felt needs that they think they have to have as a priority. And no other organisation is going to preach and proclaim and put before them the forgiveness of sins outside the church. That's our job. That's our heart. That's what we want to see. That's the work of the church. And it's the work of the saints within it. And what we want to do is firstly just examine our own hearts. Is this what we actually want to see? Do we want to see people with that unseen need, the forgiveness of sins, come to have their sins forgiven by Jesus and start a new relationship with him? Is that what burns on our hearts? Now, I'm assuming the answer is yes. That's why you've come to this workshop. But more importantly, and on top of that, how does that actually happen at your church? Is there an intentionality to uphold this purpose that's so abundantly clear in Jesus' life, in your ministry and in your church? And because without the conviction that comes from our own hearts, all the processes, plans and systems and things we're going to talk about actually mean very little if you don't have a desire to actually see it happen. And if you don't have that conviction, you're probably in the wrong workshop. So let's dive into some lessons from Kellyville. So I've been at Kellyville since March 2022. Now, we had Reach Australia come in May 2022, and as part of the consult when they come, they produce a snapshot of the health of the church. Now, let me show you our snapshot in May 2022. If you've never seen one of these consult snapshots before, there's a lot of data and things to sort of think through. But in the top left-hand corner, you can see the attendance growth and what's happening with that. And you can see that Kellyville had been declining. Children compared to your average Sunday attendance, what's happening in your mission, and the healthies you want to see around 5%. And then your front door in terms of what's happening first-timers compared to your average Sunday attendance. Is there a newcomer system? What's happening in your serve space, your small group space? Compare your average age compared to ABS data, your staff ratio, your giving, and if there's any secondary giving, and then they rate them in terms of some of their metrics in terms of what's healthy, what's a concern. So this was when they came. And so I've been there a couple of months, still trying to get my head around who's who, what's what. But what I want you to notice is the conversions. There's really not much that was happening in the mission space. Our front door was pretty much unknown. Now, if you're in my shoes, you've walked into this church and, you have that burning conviction, you want to get mission going, you want to see those conversions start to rise. What are you going to do if this was your church? 2 minutes, people next to you, what are you going to do? Let me interrupt. It'd be great to hear just a couple of responses. Mikey, do you still have the other mic? Just want to, if you put your hand up and just say what your name is, what church you go to, and give us just one thing you'd do. Be brave. We're all friends. You're actually all now consultants for Reach Australia, so over here. So just name, church, one thing you do.
Yep, Todd, Cross and Crown on the Gold Coast. The top left box, the one below it and the one to right of it.
Yep.
So it looks like there's something going on with the front door. So I'd work on the who's coming, who's the newcomers, make it a warm experience so that, so that people come back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you catch those who are new and don't know Jesus.
Yeah. Thanks, Todd. Up the back over. I'll get to go there, he's closer, and then we'll go up the back.
I'm Brad from Dalby Presbyterian. I would ask questions about the 2 conversions. Someone did something in the last year, so chase that up.
Yep. Up the back.
And connected to that, I'd just film some stories of those 2 conversions and celebrate it in your church to help grow the heat.
Thank you. What was your name?
Jeremy from Lighthouse Church.
Thanks, Jeremy. Down the front.
Hello there. James Nodder from Ipswich in Queensland. We were talking about the importance of asking questions. Do they have, in terms of the congregation, the conviction of mission? And, also what about competence? It's a matter of they have the conviction, but they don't know how.
Yeah.
So just understanding a bit more as to what's going on in the grassroots.
Yeah. Thank you. One more over here.
Thank you, Mark from Chatswood Baptist Church. I think I'd be asking, what does the service look like? What's actually happening on a Sunday in church?
Yeah. Thank you. Well done. As I said, you could all go work for Reach as consultants. There was no quiet conversations anywhere. Well done. Now, before I show you where we're sitting now, I just want to preface with 2 statements. Firstly, every church is unique. That is, no one else has your set of circumstances. And the people that make up your church are different to the people who I found at Kellyville. And it would be a mistake to say in what follows, what we've done at Kellyville will 100% work in your context. Okay? Don't want you to think, if I just do this, it's going to work. That's too much responsibility for me to bear. But on the flip side, every church is sort of the same. That is, trends are the same around various churches. So before being at Kellyville, I worked for Reach for almost 12 months, and there were so many similar trends with lots and lots of churches in terms of declining attendance, lack of mission heats, not many conversions. In some ways, what I came across here was your average suburban church that you could almost find anywhere across Australia. This is the state of the play across many, many churches in Australia. So, I worked with the team over the last the Reach Australia team over the last couple of weeks. This is where we sit now in terms of our snapshot. So, we've had some changes. Our attendance growth has gone up. Our children's percentage has dropped a little bit. We've seen a number of people get converted, which obviously means our attendance growth has risen. Our first-time visitors we've actually started to track. We have a system. Because of the growth we've seen, we've had very few systems in terms of getting people serving, getting people into small groups, kicking that discipleship pathway off. Our staff ratio has risen, and even though the giving says unhealthy, I don't think it is. And so there's lots of good stories in here. In terms of attendance growth, we have almost doubled in 2 years. Not quite, almost doubled in the last 2 years in attendance. In the last 12 months, we've seen 12 people confess Jesus for the very first time. 7 last year and 5 just across first term this year. I actually heard just one more on Sunday. A lady who did the very first Life series that we ran back in 2022 when we're just giving it a go. A lady brought her friend along and has just met with her regularly. Just consistently, patiently answering her questions. And she came up to me on Sunday and said, I want to let you know, Sue's become a Christian. I was like, amazing. She goes, it was the very first Life series. So praise God for that. So how do we get to here? And how do we get to this point and turn things around, especially in the area of mission? And there is a little bit of a sense of, I'm not quite sure why I'm here and why Scott asked me to do this workshop. Let me show you. So we get together as a staff team each quarter and we report on what's happening. At the end of term 1, 2023, this is taken straight out of the reports I wrote for mission at our quarterlies. End of term 1, our evangelistic culture feels like trying to warm up a cold Olympic-sized swimming pool to be warm enough to swim in. Slow. Building a team has had frustrations but had a few small wins along the way. Feels like we've got a long way to go. End of term 2, 2023. This is going to take years. Nice to have a team now who are on board, committed and keen to see change. End of term 4. Small group studies, which we'll come to, anecdotally seem to be going okay. Still feels like a lot of work to do. I think it's slowly starting to turn, but emphasis on the word slowly. We haven't necessarily done something that I think is spectacularly different. We've tried lots and lots of things over the 2 years. And so this isn't a formula. I mean, I'm not good at maths. I do know if you apply the right formula to the right equation, you get the right result. And so what you're about to hear is not a mission formula that will miraculously transform people into Christians. But I've also had an internal conviction that when I had the opportunity to lead a church, I'd want to lead a church that doesn't just talk about evangelism, rather one that is serious about being intentional in reaching the lost around us. Now, absolutely resting on reformed evangelical convictions about who does the saving. We're not questioning that. Everyone knows it's God working through his Spirit to draw people back to himself in repentance and faith. But in the same way that I'm convicted about who does the growing of Christians, but I've never seen a church without small groups. And I've never met pastors who go, don't join our small groups. Everyone wants their people to be in small groups in order for them to grow, but surely you rest on those same convictions that it's God who gives the growth. Why wouldn't you build a system that tries as hard as we can to reach the lost and encourage as many people to be part of it as possible? And this is a little bit now in terms of what we have done to build that system over the past 18 months. Now, I'm going to hit you with heaps of information. Now, you may hear it and you think, there's just no way I can do all that. You can't do everything, but you can do something. Can't do everything, but you can do something. And my encouragement is to perhaps just take one thing and give that a go. And in each of the 9 things that I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say, hey, this is what we did. This is why we did it. This was the impact that it had. And I'm going to ask you for a call to action at the end of it. Okay, any questions at this point? Nope, just get into it. Okay. Number 1, first thing we did, in no particular order, is we set goals. We worked out goals that we would like to see. If you're part of the Foundations Day yesterday, or you've been part of Reach Australia even just for a little while, you would have heard about outcome thinking. And so we put together output and input goals. And we broke these down into some of our component ministries and times across the year. Let me give you an example of our 2024 goals in this space. And this is just a couple of them. I wasn't going to bore you with them all. But in terms of the high level, what do we actually want to see? We want to see people saved. And so across the course of this year, we want to see 16 people confess faith for the first time. And when we put these together at our staff conference last year, 16 was 4%. So we're trying to shoot towards that 5%, but trying to do it realistically, not necessarily shooting to go, hey, we're just going to smash it out of the park. And then I've broken it down in terms of what sort of, where would you see that in terms of our congregations and our ministries? And then in order to see that, what are the inputs that we need to see that come across to our life series? So 30 non-Christians engaged in the life series, that would approximately mean, around half then would become Christians, which statistically speaking for us, in terms of what happens. Now, I didn't get a chance to write these in here, but in terms of where we're sitting, so we haven't seen anyone from 8:30. We've seen one from 10:30. We've seen 2 at our 6 o'clock service. We've seen 3 at our youth. We haven't seen any in kids. Term 1, we didn't hit 10. We hit 4, and we'll see how we go for term 2. But this is just an example. And then, we want to see 5 people come to church, all life from our English for Life ministry. It doesn't sit there doing its own thing. It's part of our mission. And the input goal is perhaps to think about a simultaneous translation of the Life series at one point this year in order to capture some of them. So that's what we did. And there's a whole stack of others if you want to come and chat to me afterwards. Why did we do this? Why set goals? Why set targets? We did it so that we would actually be focused and serious about what sort of evangelistic impact do we want to see. And we also did it because we want to challenge the status quo amongst us as a staff team and amongst us as a church. And breaking it down into various aspects around church also helps us to be sharp. Also helps us to record where are we seeing people become Christians? Why not? It just was a challenging thing for us to do and challenge that status quo. What was the impact that it had? Well, it gave me focus on what I'd like to see. It enabled myself and the mission team to think about what do we want to see, and then what would we need to do in order to see that outcome. The impact also in terms of how we utilised our calendar for mission. And we put mission stuff into our calendar first. It needs to take priority because mission's so easy to slip off the calendar. So we put that in first. But the impact also too, our goals weren't rods to beat us with. But they enable us to ask intelligent questions around what's actually happening in church. And that's been also helpful. What's working? What's not working? Do we need to keep doing this? Do we need to do more of that? Do we need to do less of this? All those questions were super, super helpful for us as we started to think about what do we want to see happen at mission in our church. So here's my call to action for you. What are your current goals for mission? Do you have any? What are your current goals? The second thing we did, we built a team who would share the responsibility of getting church fired up for mission. Now, this needed to start with someone on the team who was responsible for taking that overall responsibility for being on mission at church. And that was me. And so I took on that responsibility. We also then had a lady join our church who was just, a gun personal evangelist. And I tried so hard to bring her into the mission team. And I said, come play nice, come play part of the team with us. And she sort of tried. And I tried to get her to bring her friends along to the Life series. But I soon realised all I was doing is putting roadblocks in front of her. It wasn't her strength, and I was only holding her back because it seemed like everyone that came into her orbit just ended up becoming a Christian. And so I got out of the way and said, just go for it, and released our gun evangelist rather than try and bring her, sit in meetings, think about the whole, that's just not her strength. And that was a good thing for the kingdom. It was a good thing for our church. It was a good thing for me to understand that everyone needs to come in and be part of the team. So why do it? Why build a team? Why not just get on and make something happen by yourself? Well, it's important to share some responsibility. And let me tell you, it was slow, and I absolutely started with the wrong people. And I don't know whether you've had the experience of when you suddenly realise you've got the wrong people on the team, and depending on how conflict adverse you are, it's hard to get them off. Now, they were the wrong people, which was totally my fault. I was way too hasty to build a team. I did it badly. I didn't actually have any idea what joining the team meant. I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted them to do. They were super keen to talk all things mission, and we probably spent 6 months talking, and nothing ever went forward. The mission dial didn't move, and in the end, they didn't really have the time to invest into it, but they were super happy to tell me what to do. Now, some of the key people that were part of that mission team ended up being a blessed subtraction and left and went to another church, not over this, over something else, and actually gave me the chance to reset the team without actually having to have the guts to say, you're in the wrong team. And so I asked some different people to come on board. Onboarded them a little better, still not great. I gave them videos of past Reach conferences. There's a really great mission paper for them to interact with. I met with them individually, helped them understand, here's the big picture of what we're trying to do. Here's a little bit of the scope and responsibility, and it's been better. They understand ecosystem and that it's not just about, hey, let's try and get mission firing. It's about trying to use the whole ecosystem. And it's wonderful they've understood it. Trying to get some of them to stay in their lane and go, actually, I know you really, what you want is deep in the word for this, but that's not your responsibility, and that's not the scope of what we're responsible for. And I've tried to do that without squashing their enthusiasm to see mission going. But here's the wonderful thing about the team that I've currently got. They absolutely share the responsibility of helping build a culture and a system where people come to know Jesus. They fundamentally get that. Now, probably could have done it better in various aspects, but I'm really happy with the team that I have right now. Right now, we're in a healthy disagreement about the place of short-term mission trips and their place in getting Mission Heat going, but it's a passionate discussion about how do we get our whole church thinking and getting mission going. And one guy in particular is like, it's mission trips. Absolutely, it's mission trips. I'm like, is it? And the challenge now moving forward is about responsibility stuff. They've taken the responsibility, which is good, and they feel it like I feel it. The challenge for me now as leading the team is giving the responsibility away. That's part of the Reach Australia framework, give and take responsibility. And so I've taken that responsibility. It's here. Now I'm keen for them to give some of that away to them so that they can have responsibility around various areas of mission. Now, what impact did this have going through the team process? The impact on mission was to then, what I've ended up is a group of people who have shared and owned getting all of church fired up for mission. That is, it doesn't just sit with me now. It sits with the team. The team, again, it's not a large team. There's three of them and myself, so there's four of us. The impact, it wasn't just me now trying to move the dial. It was four of them, and four of them helping think about this overall purpose area. They helped me think through the goals. So we set the goals together, and I bring them to staff conference and say, hey, how do you think this is going to go? How many people do you think we're going to get here? What do we need to do with this ministry? It sharpened my thinking, really sharpened my thinking. They've thought of heaps of ideas that I never would have come up with. And they have also been super keen to help, to actually dive in and do stuff, not just talk. So here's the call to action. Do you have a team that helps you think about mission, or are you still trying to do it by yourself? Do you have a team that helps you think about mission, or are you still trying to do it by yourself? That was number 2. Now, was there a question? Someone put their hand up before. Sorry, mate. I didn't mean to ignore you. Just need because this is getting recorded, so I just need the mic, yeah.
G'day, Matt Kennedy from Islington Baptist. Just going back to goals.
Where's Islington?
Islington, it's kind of just northwest of the city in Newcastle.
Okay.
It's like the new town of Newcastle.
Okay. It's the cool part of Newcastle.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
Nice.
You should all come here. Come there.
Okay.
Anyway, going back to goals, your input goal was something you didn't really have complete control over. It was having 30 non-Christians attend.
Yep.
I think it's helpful that it's not just we're going to run 3 courses, because you can run 3 courses and not push yourself. But there's also a sense in which, how do you? Can you just talk about that? I guess setting a goal, an input goal that you don't really have control over, and why you did that. Yeah,
I mean, we don't have any control of the output goals either, in terms of how many people actually. So I'm pointing to the screen; it's not even there. So we don't have any control over any of these from a mission point of view, and so what we're trying to do is give ourselves an opportunity that's going to be a bit of a stretch goal for us. Like this is what we'd like to see happen, and then we're trying to really work hard with people coming through the door, contacts that we have. To try and get them to come along to life as our sort of main conversion engine piece. Now, as I said, we've got someone else and she's doing great work, seeing people saved and doing personal evangelism along those. So why set goals that you have no, control over? Again, it's probably going a little bit back also to some of the things that Herdy talks about in terms of influence while we don't have control over these things, we can work our whole church in order to try and see these things come to fruition. And so they put something before us, they put, here's what we want to see, and we give it our best shot. Does that help?
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Up the back there, Mikey.
My name's Michael from St Peter's, South Tamworth. Just thought I'd catch you while you've got that slide up. It looks like to me you've got 2 output goals there, just at different stages in the pipeline or the pathway.
Sure.
So how do you sort of distinguish output and input goals in your mission team? And wondering if you could just unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. So the reason I've differentiated these out is this is ultimately what we'd like to see is the 16. That's but how are we going to do that? What are the inputs we would need to see in order to see 16 people saved? And so we need to see at least 30 people come through our life series, and that's the input we need to see the output. So that's why I've differentiated those 2 things. Now you could put that maybe as your output goal to see 30 people come, but they're connected. They go together, which is why I've put the inputs and outputs in there. I'll come back to you. We'll take one more question. We'll come back to you. Jayesh.
Hello, Jayesh from Ithaca Presbyterian Church. Just on that, so you said you've historically seen 50% of people coming to your life course become Christians?
We don't really have a historic.
Okay.
We're only a couple of years in.
But is that why you've set your input goal as 30, which is double your output goal?
Yeah, in terms of what we've already seen, what we've currently seen is around that sort of 50%. But, in 2 years' time, that might be fundamentally different as we get more and more data.
Yeah. And so do your youth and kids go to your life series?
No.
Right.
They don't.
So what's your strategy for them?
I've got a whole thing on kids and youth.
All right, great.
Was there one more question here? Yeah? Absolutely.
So in the first thing, set goals, and then you mentioned how that impacts your calendar, priorities, stuff like that. And then second, make a team and da-da-da-da. Is this assumed that you have sat down as a staff and gone, mission is the thing this year or whatever? And so you're doing these, detriment's the wrong word, but to the detriment of other areas, but you are prioritising this for calendar and this for teams and this for members and this for resourcing? Is that behind all this as well?
Yes, it is. So staff conference,
Yep.
I ask all the team, and they've all got responsibilities for various areas around the ecosystem to come with their goals for what they want to see happen next year, the resources required, all those things. We sort of put them all together, and then we have a conversation around. And normally you get to the end of those things, and you've got like 45 things that you could be doing.
Yeah.
It's too many. And so we then go, what are our top 3 strategic things we want to move the dial on this year? Last year it was mission. We want to start to see significant impact. And so we were strategic, because that's a strategic priority for us. It gets priority in terms of resources, people, in order to start to see the dial moved on those particular things. And we do that process each and every year, so that we go, when it's like, hey, when it's a fight between this good person here and they're super keen for mission, and it's our strategic priority for that year, that wins at the detriment that they could, be a wonderful addition into the music team.
Yeah, and so you mentioned 2 or 3 or whatever. What were the other competing ones the year that you did this stuff? Do you remember?
I'm looking at my team. Do you remember? Oh, I've got a note in my phone,
Cool.
but it's going to take me a while to find it.
So, because there was those big attendance, negative 20%, there was no newcomer thing. So you might be coming to this, but yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you that in terms of the beginning, and we'll talk about the start of the pathway in a little bit, but first year we let our membership pastor and community absolutely run riot.
Yeah, cool.
In terms of, making sure the front was really good. And he did.
Nice. Sweet.
Much to, the disappointment of everyone else. So I'll come back to that question. Let's keep moving on, because we're only at point 3. Okay. Number 3, we built vision around mission. What did we do? Now, I had the luxury upon starting that church was hungry for a new vision. Kelly was at the point they wanted a new direction. They wanted change. And the group of people that hired me, the set of nominators, it was one of the things we spoke about at length during our conversations. Now, this was enormously helpful for me to get mission heat firing from day one. My very first talk, which was Matthew 28, and basically the call to action was, hey, what would happen at this church if every person made Matthew 28 their own personal mission statement? What would that do to our church over a number of years? And so it gave us the opportunity to put mission front and centre anytime we spoke about vision. In particular, we talk about God's heart for the lost. And it's everywhere in scriptures. You don't have to make it up. You just got to open your Bible and bang, it smacks in front of you. And in particular, we talked also about our mission field. So this is some data that Anglican sent me. And you can see, I won't give you the full mission vision pitch, but Kellyville Church sort of sits in the centre of that dot. And this is a 5-kilometre radius around Kellyville. And you see by the year 2030, the projected population is over 200,000 people. It's growing. And so when we talk about our vision statement and, you know, the sort of church that we want to be, we talk about God's heart for the lost. We talk about, hey, look at all these people around us that have no idea who Jesus is. And we came with a brand new vision. This is ours, to be a church that changes the course of people's story with Jesus. I didn't want numbers. I didn't want a time frame. I want to reach as many people as we can, as quickly as we can. I don't want to say we want to be this size church by this particular point in time, but what sort of church do we want to be given God's revealed word and what's happening in our context? What sort of church do we need to be? And so we have built talking vision into various aspects of our pathway, especially as people enter our church. We want them to get behind where we are going as a church. We want them to get to the point and say, I'm in, let's go. 2 places in particular. Newish, which is the sort of triage part of our pathway, which we'll come to, runs first Sunday of every month. And the first thing I do is say, I want to share our vision with you. And so every newcomer that attends gets to hear me unpack the vision. And then our member moment, which we call together, again, we start with vision. We have a Vision Sunday once a year, and it's basically an opportunity to put our mission field before our people and then put some concrete actions from a mission point of view. So this year when we do Vision Sunday, it was, who are the 3 people who you want to see come to know Jesus for the very first time? Who are they in your life? And we said, write them down, you know, gave everyone a piece of paper. Who are the 3 people? We said, go back and share them with your small groups. Share them with your friends. Pray for them. Pray that they actually become Christians. Think about how can you share the gospel with them. Now, we're about to make some big changes with our services. We need to move to have 2 morning services. And we've built comms again around vision, which is essentially around mission. And we've asked ourselves, what sort of church do we need to be in order to welcome 200,000 people take steps towards us? What sort of church would we need to be? Now, this 200,000, it's filled with families. So we need 2 morning services with kids programs in order to give us the capacity to reach as many as we can. So vision and mission have absolutely gone together for us. Now, what impact did this have? The impact is that mission now is front and centre at each of the crucial steps as people are onboarded into church. And it communicates strongly. We don't just talk about mission at this church. We do it at this church. And the expectation is that you do it too. You jump in because we want to see your friends, your family. We want to see our community come to know Jesus. And we're serious about making it happen. So here's my call to action when it comes to vision stuff. Do you need to revisit your vision to incorporate mission? And I want to say, if you're a senior pastor in the room, I really want to encourage you to be that person that drives that process. Don't delegate that to the mission person on your team. It will seriously help give weight to mission across the whole church if you drive that process of revisiting vision around mission. Next thing we did, we paid attention to the beginning of the pathway. Now, if you think about church as a pathway, hopefully you've seen similar-ish diagram if you've been part of Reach for a little while. That is, if you want the community, friends, family who are a long way away from Jesus to come to know Jesus, they firstly need to know that we're here. That is, you need to raise awareness that we are here as a church, even if the only thing they know is that that's the church I don't go to, right? And when they do arrive, and if they do arrive, you want to make a good first impression. And these things feed into the mission part of the pathway. And we've done a lot in this space over the last couple of years, especially around raising awareness and in first contact. So some of the raising awareness things that we did. We'd been doing a food drive with Anglican for a long time. We now do it twice a year, and we couple it close to our outreach events. That is, if you're familiar with the mission funnel idea, we made it fit into the mission funnel. This year, we did it 2 weeks, 1 week before Easter, 3 weeks before Easter. Every donation that goes into the trolley gets a thank you card, and on the back are our Easter details. Met a lady at church 2 weeks ago, and I said, how did you find out about us? And why'd you come to Kellyville? She said, I donated at the food drive. And I've been hungry to find a church. And we got your flyer and we decided we'll come along. Amazing. Now, our second one this year is about 3 weeks prior to our week-long mission event in October. And again, it'll be, hey, thanks for donating. And on the back of the card, it will say, here's some details about our kids' program. It's just about raising awareness, but it's also not just throwing a rock in and seeing what happens. It's building some stepping stones so they can actually end up on our property and get to meet Jesus. Another thing in the raise awareness was our website. With a new vision, we completely rebranded, apologies for marketing languages, with launch of Fresh Vision. We used to call ourselves KAC or CAC, but nobody knows what that is or who that is outside of church. And so we stopped calling ourselves that. No KAC up the front. And we worked with the Reach Australia digital arm to make something that is outsider focused. And we made the website completely for the person checking out church. We also completely changed our external signage in the last 6 months. We also made our socials about engaging with our community, not to do internal communication. We've used some paid and targeted ads to get the word out that we exist, we're here. And we use those ads particularly around Christmas and Easter. And we've had heaps of people engage and come with that. We ran one around the 1st of January when Sunday was the 1st. Or was that New Year's Eve? No, it was the 1st. There's a couple, last year. And we just put a reel up and said, start your year with us. And we got way more people than we'd ever thought would walk in the door as a result of it. We're getting better. Each time we give it a go, we're getting smarter at it. Our Easter numbers around our socials this year were very good. You can go check out our Facebook or Instagram. We don't have anything else, do we? Just those two? If you want to see some of the things that we've tried. We kicked off running a carols. We're blessed with really great musicians, and so we started an outdoor carols in 2022. We invited the community and they came. I reckon each time it's been 30 to 40% community people, and each time it grows to the point where I've been worried about success and it going too well. We have a limit in terms of how many people we can physically fit on our sites. Easter and Christmas, we've thought seriously about how to sort of make those fly. Given the number of subcontinentals in our area, last year I invited our good Archbishop to come. It was great to have him come, even better to hear his story and understand his story of conversion. We revamped our ESL ministry, which again was just the right leader at the right time, because our mission field around us is increasingly diverse, especially with Indians and Asians. And having a way to reach the various communities is vital to see the kingdom grow. Our ESL ministry, when I arrived, was dormant. We tried to resurrect it. The team did not want to teach the Bible in any way, shape or form. What they wanted to do was teach English and didn't really want to share Jesus at all. And so I started working with the team in order of what do we actually want to see happen ultimately. Not just teach English, but we would love them to come to know Jesus. They didn't know how to do that, what that would look like. Lady came along to church, super keen, super passionate about it. She's like, do you run ESL? Anyway, she ended up leading the team. Some couldn't quite make the transition, but now in terms of non-Christians in the room weekly, this ministry outstrips any others that we do. And now we're working on ways in which we can help people take steps towards Jesus post-ESL, especially if they want to come to church. We print off full scripts of sermons so they can go and they can follow along. We encourage them to go to our YouTube channel, put the subtitles on, and they can watch along there. We also start up a way for us to be on mission as a whole church. We call ours Villefest. The first year we did it in 2022, it was just a one-day thing. Let's just dip our toe in the water. And we just had kids come along. And then we sort of asked church, hey, how do you think it went? Is this a good time, bad time for evangelism? Do you want to do it again? They're like, yeah, we really like this. This was great. Engaged lots of people in church. But they said, winter sucks. Stop doing it in winter. And so we did. So we've moved it to spring. So we gave that a go for the first time last year, over 3 days, engaged way more volunteers. I brought someone on to co-direct with me, with the idea that she would take it on by herself this year. She said, I'll only do it if you do it again. So I'm doing it again. And we've included some adults into that, some hospitality, and lots more people just inviting their friends and starting to engage with us. And we also raised awareness just among our own people. We just paid more attention to two-audience preaching. As the mission pastor, I'm looking at our preachers and trying to make sure each week they're addressing the not yet Christian, promoted life regularly from up front so that people know that it's on, that it's happening. So as you can see, lots of things we did in the raise awareness piece. But we also worked hard on ensuring first contact went well. You saw in May 2022, there was no welcome system at all. It was basically if you sat next to the right person, you got welcomed really well. But if you sat next to the wrong person, it was a disaster. And so when they came to do our Reach Consult, there's two of them that came. One had the best experience of his life, got invited back to someone else's place for lunch. The other one stood in the corner of the foyer by himself for 20 minutes. And aren't you glad that was Scott Sanders? So we worked hard to try and make it from unintentional to intentional, away from good luck to process and systems. Our welcomers now know about life, so if they meet someone and they're like, yeah, I'm here trying to check Jesus out, trying to figure out who it is, they know, oh, you should come and do life. That's the place for you to land. And again, in our triage event, our newish, I talk life there and say, hey, given our vision, you want to know about life. You want to know this is what we use here in order to help people meet Jesus. In fact, it might be for you right now. You might be here and you might think, hey, I need to figure out who Jesus is. Come to life. And I say, look, even if you join us from another church, it'd be great for you to come to life as well. Because if you join us, you'll want to invite your friends, but you want to trust it, you want to know it, you don't want to waste the invite. So come along, check it out, and then I hit them with the dates. So what impact did all this have? The impact that it had meant that mission activities and intentionality went from basically zero to a lot in a relatively short space of time. So here's the call to action. Are you using the start of your pathway well for mission? How well are you utilising the beginning of your pathway for mission? Okay, I'll come back to the question that was over here in just a couple of minutes, but let's keep motoring through. Number 5, we start up the conversion engine. What do we do? We began running the Life series. Now, when it comes to running conversion engines, whether it's Life, Christianity Explored, Alpha, whatever it is, I want to say doing something is better than doing nothing. Craig Hamilton says in his book, Wisdom in Leadership, anything worth doing is worth doing badly. So in 2022, we ran Life once. I invited a couple of small groups. We ran it off the back of our winter kids holiday club. We had a winter apologetic series. And do you want to know how many people we got through that? Big fat 0. No one. Now, some people did invite friends, and we had a couple of small groups. In 2023, we tried to build some confidence in it with our people. And so I got about 70% of our small groups to come along. Now, I acknowledge that some people do think differently about this. But it had been such a long time since Kellyville had seen an evangelistic course, like years and years. And so I felt it was important that they see it. Now, the feedback from small groups was very positive. After summer dinner, I interviewed people up front and said, hey, how'd you find it? What was it? If you had a friend, would you bring it? I made sure all the answers were yes before. In start of this year, we stopped inviting small groups along and just let it run, get a proper sense of, are there people sort of coming along? And as you see, we had 4 people who weren't Christians come in term 1. Our goal was 10. But out of those 4, 2 became Christians. But all 4 are doing more to Life. And that kicks off for them next Wednesday night. Now, why kick off a conversion engine? It just keeps mission on the agenda. It just keeps me thinking, who could be doing this? It keeps us sharp from the front in terms of going, hey, Life's coming up. It just puts mission on the agenda over and over again. And the impact that this has, it feels small. Even though our mission field is large, there's 200,000 people, that old cliche that you eat an elephant one bite at a time is true when it comes to your mission field. How do you reach 200,000 people? One person at a time. And so even when it feels small, even when it feels unimpressive, and it still does, that's the mentality that I'm working with. One person at a time. And in terms of invites, I always got a list going after Sundays. Who did I meet? I chat with our welcoming teams, who should do it. Some people fill in forms and say, yeah, I'm keen to come to Life, which makes my job very easy. Now, my concern at the moment in terms of our mission heat is that pretty much nearly everyone who walks into Life has walked through the church Sunday front door. And I wonder, what's that saying about our own personal invitation culture? Is it there not yet? Is it, not quite working yet? It's not exactly where I'd like it to be, but I'm not sure how much of a problem that is. The other thing we did in here is we began running More to Life, a follow-up course out of whatever your evangelistic course is. But I want to let you know we didn't get this up and going until 18 months into it, after we'd run Life probably 3 or 4 times. And at the end of any evangelistic course, you've got the cliff, don't you? I was talking to a couple of guys earlier yesterday, and they're like, yeah, we've got the one this going, but we don't have anything that comes after it. And you need a bridge for people to, keep going along in their journey, knowing that actually a bunch of people really probably make their commitment to Jesus in what happens after Life, not in Life itself. But it took me a long time to get More to Life off the ground. I've handed over responsibility to it. So one of the ladies on the mission team is running it. And so right now, as of next week, I'll have both running at the same time for the first time. But that's taken me 2 years to get to that point. And if you're going to make one part of your mission funnel shine, make it your conversion engine. No point having amazing contact stuff, great connect events, but your conversion engine's an absolute disaster. I would say build your conversion engine well and then build other things around it. So my call to action is, do you have a conversion engine and has it actually started? Do you need to kick it off? Number 6, we built some heat through our small groups. What do we do in our small group space? Nothing for the first 18 months. Now, the idea came halfway through last year from our mission team, not from me. Hey, could we get people to work up their testimony and then build it around some heat around out of the word for evangelism? So the mission team and I wrote a 6-week set of studies called Sharing Your Story of Conversion in Conversation. Why did we do this? It was a conviction that testimony and people's stories are a powerful way of sharing the gospel. And all the way through each and every time that we did the study, at the end we said, hey, who are your 3 people? We'd already spoken about it, coming out of vision, who are your 3 people? And then we just want to keep that going. Share them with the group, pray with them, ask each other about them, do some things together. Now, what was the impact? The impact out of this is we've got a heap of great stories. Heap of people are like, how good was it to hear the story of this person and what Jesus has done in their life? And it's just great. So here's the call to action. Are there things you can do with your small groups to build mission heat? Number 7, we captured some stories. We captured some stories of people who had become Christians. I think this was someone else's recommendation. And we showed these at big services. So at Easter and at Christmas and baptism Sundays, they were a chance for people to hear stories of people who have become Christians. A chance for us to say, this is what we want to see. And stories convey vision better than any words. And it's such a great thing to be able to say, this is what we want to see. This is what we want to see over and over again. Isn't this why it makes your heart, just explode and say, this is amazing, seeing God work to have the course of their story changed with Jesus. And the impact this had was people went, mission works. How good is it? People are becoming Christians. And I think for a lot of people in our own churches and outside our churches, they actually don't think people become Christians anymore. But God's still at work, still saving his people. There's an opportunity to show what's been happening. Let me show you one of the stories that we did at the end of last year.
大家好，我是彭叔，我是主的跟随者，我来自中国大陆，和2个姐妹一起来澳洲4年了。我出生在一个没有信仰的家庭，在国内的时候，曾经有2个朋友来家里和妹妹艳华一起讨论圣经。当时我妹妹邀请我一起参加，可是我对学经根本不感兴趣。来到澳洲之后，我妹妹艳华很快找到了教会。每周来教会和兄弟姐妹一起积极参加教会的查经小组，继续跟随神。他也不断的请我尝试参加，打开自己的心来认识神，让我跟着他参加教会礼拜。可是心始终没有打开。我的妹妹在认识耶稣基督做她生命主之后，她的生命发生了翻天覆地的变化。作为生命在一起的亲人，我明显感觉到他对待人、接待物，对自己的孩子、身边的朋友、亲人，每一天都被主塑造，变得更加宽容，更有耐心，会有更加为别人着想。他一直在对我说，是耶稣 基督耶稣通过他的话赐给他生命的新的生命，带着他不断地走向圣洁。他生命真实的见证让我想去探索对生命改变的大能。妹妹邀请我一起参加周三的中文查经组，一起参加教会的崇拜。刚开始来到 Kellyville 教会的时候，因为语言的问题，我觉得很孤单和害羞，没有办法融入，被排斥在外的感觉，所以来参加崇拜觉得很不舒服。在参加约翰福音查经的过程中，刚开始是出于了解的目的，读圣经就是觉得在读神话故事。主慢慢地打开了我的心，在每周学习圣经过程中，福音的大能引导着我每一步走向主，认识到自己的罪，听到主的呼唤，接受耶稣基督作为我生命的救主和王，变得更像主的样子。我知道以后的路还很长，但是有主同在，他一定会保守我，带领我的生命，一直到主的来的那一天。
It's just wonderful to be able to show stories of what God's been doing amongst our church. Is really, really quite a powerful thing. And we also did Baptism Sunday. So it was great to baptise Xu Peng when she shared her testimony. So we started up an opportunity for people to publicly declare they are Christians by doing Baptism Sunday. And we did this in order to celebrate mission. It's one thing you put all this investment into, trying to build awareness, contacts, get your life series going, doing all these things, and having people respond, which is wonderful. But you want the church to celebrate that, to go, how good is it to be part of mission here at church and see God concretely at work? And so we do baptism twice a year, and they're always just, for me personally, just some of the most encouraging Sundays. And it's wonderful to do the prep as well with them. We ask them to prep their testimony, so it's not a prerequisite in order for you to be baptised, but it's helpful to hear their Christian stories. And it's just amazing to hear. And one of the deep encouragements for me, so we did Baptism Sunday 2 Sundays ago, was to baptise a girl there who had walked into church, desperately seeking Jesus, Catholic upbringing, and went, what do I do? She came to life, and at the end of life, she said, become a Christian. And for me, she's one of the first people to walk through the whole sort of process and pathway. And that was just it was a deep joy for me. Lastly, and then we'll get to a stack of questions. Oh, there's Baptism Sunday. There we go. Lastly, we didn't forget about kids and youth. One of our output goals is to have 10% or greater non-Christian kids in our youth ministries on a Friday night. Now, most of us will be aware that the percentage of people who make a profession of faith before the age of 18, the US stats are super high, like 94%. 78%, according to the NCLS Aussie data, make a profession of faith. So what this did is, in terms of our kids and our youth, more probably our youth than our kids, was to put mission on their radar. So our youth team are organised around purposes. So they have a mission team that meet, think through how do we get our youth fired up for mission, how do we make mission fly amongst our youth. So one of the things they decided to do was to do the Life Series sets of talks for youth camp in April this year. And as a result, 3 kids professed faith out of youth camp. But the other thing that was beautiful was it just cemented a whole stack of kids in terms of a rod going, I know what I believe now. And I know there's, good evidence for it. In the youth space, we've run some big nights using various parachurch organisations for big fun nights with evangelistic things. We've tried the Invite a Mate nights. In terms of one of the areas to work in this year, I'm keen to work with that youth mission team, and to work also in our kids ministry to help them bring some greater intentionality for what they're doing. So call to action in this last one is, are you intentionally thinking across your whole church, not just adults, but are you thinking about kids and youth? Well, there you go. There's some of the things we did to get mission heat firing across our church over the past couple of years. We've got some time for some questions. We've got about 10 minutes for questions. I've popped these slides into the workshop group, I think. I hope I did the right one. And I'll pop in there once I've finished here. I have a one-page summary of everything here, and I've put it in terms of what we do in the first 9 months, what we've done over the next 9 to 18 months, and what we hope to do over the next 2 to 4 years. So you can see it all in one page. So I'll pop that on to the chat at some point very soon. Okay, questions. Go wherever you need to go, Mikey.
From the front. Super quick one before I ask my actual question. You mentioned a paper about evangelism.
Yes.
Could you put that on the thing as well, or link that there?
That is Dave Jensen up there, isn't it? I can't see. Is that your mission paper? Yeah. Yeah. You didn't write it, did you? Just put your name on it. Yeah. If you go to reachaustralia.com.au/mission something ebook, just mission /mission.
Awesome, cool. My actual question, you mentioned a comment there about the personal stuff and how you're not sure how that's whether or not that's a problem, because all of the things you've touched on here are sort of church pathways, that sort of stuff.
You've got an answer for me?
No, I don't have an answer. Okay. I have the same problem. Do you have any thoughts in that space about how to help people? Because we meet in a school hall, we don't have a public building, people don't know we exist unless they're walking past on Sunday morning, that sort of stuff. We're not very visible, and therefore we don't get many walk-ins that are non-Christians. Maybe a few a term. And therefore, any engagement we'd have would require people to be actively engaging with the 30-odd relationships that they have in their life already.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on how I can help God's people want to be a part of God's mission because He's worth it?
Yeah. It's fundamentally probably boils down to a conviction question. What do they actually want to see for their friends and family? Are they convicted by the realities, the eternal realities that sit there? And do they personally believe that in terms of the vehicle that God is going to use to reach their friends and family is most likely them? So there's some conviction things that, we talk about in order to sort of help, prick and prompt the heart to say, what's going on for your own heart? Knowing that, church changes in terms of you reach one people at a time, church changes one person at a time. In terms of as one person grasps, those conviction pieces, it's then the question of what would it look like if, two people had that, if we had a group of people who had that sort of conviction. So there's some of those things there. There's probably some training things you can do alongside that to help build competence and confidence in building their sort of, tools in their tool belt that they can use. The testimony stuff for us was, and still I personally think is the way in which you're going to get a hearing for the gospel, because it's your story. You can't refute someone's story. And trying to build that into conversations that you have, I think is important. Sam Chan's book, what's it called? Evangelism in a Skeptical World. His coffee and dinner sort of stuff in there, I think is also important, just socially. Yeah.
I've got two questions. First of all, kids' discipleship and evangelism is really important. When do you capture kids' conversion? How do you show that? How do you put that into your stats, kind of stuff? That's the first question. Unrelated question, international mission, cross-cultural mission. How do you engage with that? Because there's no talk of that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, kids, we haven't really got a good process. So, yep, you've helped me. Thank you. In terms of global mission, like outside of our own borders, it's a work in progress, which is, like we're at the point where we've got some mission partners. We booted a couple off, partly because it wasn't a partnership. It was us giving them money, and when I reached out and said, hey, we're thinking about stopping it, none of them got back to me. So it made the decision quite easy. But what does partnership look like? And in terms of, there was some research done about the importance of global mission and its impact on local mission. And so conscious of that in terms of what that looks like. But we're at the point where we probably need to start from ground zero and rebuild it. So it's on my radar, but yes, it genuinely is as harsh as that sounds. Yeah. Mikey, where are you going now?
I noticed that you only ran life on term 1, term 2 and term 4, but not term 3. Is that because of like a resourcing issue, or was there another reason?
We wanted to leave term 3 a little bit vacant, partly because in terms of just volume of information, in terms of just being realistic about the mission heat we've got. We also wanted to have that space for training up new small group leaders, doing some things in the deep in word space. And in terms of people's capacities and calendars, it was best for us to go, let's do it 3 times, do it well 3 times, rather than stretch ourselves for 4.
Did you notice that in term 3, the mission heat dropped and you had to pick it up again?
No, well, a little, but so last year at the spring holidays was our kids' holiday club, and so we were building up towards that, which also helped not running life for me in my own capacity for term 3. It was helped so that I could focus some attention on that.
Thanks. Just 2 quick ones. Sorry. Firstly, what do you think of the place of service structure and content? How do you think through the Sunday gathering with mission in mind?
Yeah. So there's the preaching aspect, which I briefly touched on in terms of we're pushed hard in that 2 audience space, and so I'm keen to keep hearing. Did you speak to the person who's not a Christian? We also, our services are, I think, of a good and high quality, and so trying to reduce the cringe factor, which you all know sits there, and so training our service leaders is important. What we say and how we do it, and having church engaged in singing in the service is a wonderful witness, and so we've worked on all those aspects in spaces over time. So I'm looking like our gatherings pastor is in the room. So do you want to add anything, James?
Yeah, so I think for us, we talk about life a lot. So at the moment, in the lead up to life, I think it's probably had 4 or 5 pushes. We've been really intentional about that. As for other things, we pray for our mission partners every week. And so we've probably got 4 or 5 at the moment that we pray for. And so that's always mentioned every week in that space as well. And of course, we drive really hard in the lead up to Easter, asking people who are you inviting, putting that on the forefront, the 3 people that Dave was mentioning about. And of course, with our spring mission, again, that'll have a lot of drive in that space. So from how much does it get put up from the front? It probably gets the most out of any ministry that we run is our mission space. So, yeah.
Just time for one more question. Last over here.
Oh, lucky last. How good. Thanks, Dave. Just got a question to go with trellis and vine kind of analogy. What's a trellis system or structure that you're aware of that can connect fringe members of church, non-Christian contacts that we have with the life course?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question.
So a system or structure that connects fringe members of church, non-Christian contacts we have with the life course.
Yeah.
Or
So-
not like people that we know of that we have a connection with, getting them actually...
Or getting them there.
Yeah.
So one of the things you'll notice that wasn't like is people familiar with the mission funnel? I'll put the mission funnel into if you're not familiar with it. But it's about building contacts, having connect events which connect people to Christians and Christianity that flow into the sort of conversion. You can use the mission funnel that way in terms of, and I can manage all those things and say, we've got these things, here's your contacts, invite them along to these things. But in terms of, there's an aspect in which it's just super messy because no one follows it, because people are messy. And so they turn up once and then you need to see them again for another 12 months. And so part of it is the relationship with the person at church and understanding who they are so that you can have conversations with them. But we don't have a super good process system to do, I think, if I've understood you correctly, to make all those things come together. Okay. There's heaps of info in here. One thing. The Reach Australia is all about one thing, apparently. What's one thing you're going to do as a result of this workshop? What's one thing you can do when your church you go back? Temptation will be to do everything all at once, but it's going to be hard to do. This is us over the last 2 years. This wasn't all in one go. So I'd love for you to think about what's one thing you can do in your church when you go back that you're going to try and implement. I'll put a whole bunch of resources up on the chat. I'll put Dave's mission book. There's season 21 of the Reach Australia podcast. In that link for the podcast is a link for the mission funnel. I'll put a simple mission calendar in there. If you're a senior minister, I'd love for you to think about doing the leadership development program. I think that will help you figure out priorities and change and figuring out how to do those things well. And I'll put the one-page summary on for you. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your Son, Jesus. Lord, we ask you would build that conviction within our hearts so that we would feel the weight and burden of people who don't know you, and help us in our churches to build intentionality around what we can do to reach the many people that don't know you. And Lord, we plead with you that through the work of your Spirit, you would draw many to yourself in repentance and faith. In Jesus' name, amen.